From Thomas Edison State University, this is Edison Sound Stage.
Welcome to the President's Studio on Edison Sound Stage. Listen as Thomas Edison President Merodie Hancock discusses wide-ranging topics with expert guests in areas like women in leadership, diversity and inclusion, planning for a 21st century workforce, building a better capital city, and everything in between from the perspective of a university president.
Great, thank you and welcome everyone. We appreciate you joining us today on our continuation of Thomas Edison's 50th anniversary. We're in the quarter where we're celebrating our volunteerism, community-focused work, which also happens to coincide with National Volunteer Week, which was established in 1974. So given that we were established in 1972, we think the 70s were a pretty good decade. And so today with us, we have 4 panelists. 2 are Thomas Edison alums, 1 is a current Thomas Edison student, and 1 is a Thomas Edison employee. Each of these panelists embody the community service spirit each and every day through their professional work and personal commitment. So I'm going to take a moment to introduce them, and then we're going to get into a discussion with the 4 of them. Jennifer Hutchinson, if you can wave. Jennifer serves as a chair of the local Burlington and Camden Board of Directors for the United Way of Greater Philadelphia and Southern New Jersey. That's a mouthful. She also sits on the Board of Trustees at Thomas Edison State University as our very active student trustee, volunteering her time and offering the invaluable perspective of our students to the governing body of the university. Gabriela Mendoza. Gabby has been actively involved and engaged in her community, both personally and professionally over the years, giving her time to numerous organizations, volunteering with her alma mater, and now serving in the role of community engagement coordinator at Thomas Edison. In her position, she helps build connections between the university and the surrounding community. She is pretty much our eyes and ears in the community, I think is safe to say. Melody Ward is an alumna of Thomas Edison. She works at the Center for Family Services, which operates more than 70 community-facing programs, among them the Services Empowering the Rights of Victims, or SERVE program. She and fellow SERVE members routinely provide crisis intervention counseling, connection to resources, and professional support to victims of sexual violence, domestic abuse, and human trafficking through the program's 24-hour hotline, virtual support groups, and emergency shelters. DJ Welch is also a Thomas Edison alum. DJ grew up in Trenton and worked as a social worker helping the youth in the city. He remains involved today, joining in an initiative dedicated to restoring the historic Locust Hill Cemetery, the largest African-American burial ground in Trenton. DJ now works as an operations manager at the Amazon site in Florence, where he is also community liaison and a leader in Amazon's Black Employee Network. Thank you to all of our panelists. My first questions are going to be designed to get to know each of you a little bit better. So each of you, you roll up your sleeves, you get involved, and you act as a force of good in your own community. But that expression of service looks quite different across your various scenarios. So starting with Melody, tell us a little bit about what brought you to your position at SERVE and how that work plays out.
Hello. So I started out as a volunteer for SERVE. I was actually provided that information by a fellow coworker when I was actually starting as a human service student, working on my associate's degree. And I just wanted to see what I could do with my degree. And someone just mentioned, oh, you would probably be a good fit as a volunteer. So that volunteerism led to, the first activation that I went on, which is where you're meeting someone in crisis. I just felt like that was a purpose of mine. So I wanted to just do more of that work.
Great. DJ, you're the community liaison at Amazon. Tell us what that means and how it brought you back to Trenton recently with the Locust Hill Cemetery project.
Yes, so I've actually, each Amazon location has a community liaison, and it's somebody that's really passionate about establishing good relationships in the community, implementing good neighbor practices such as noise reduction, traffic, light, litter, those kind of things, as well as getting to know the other immediate needs in the community. So I've been with Amazon for 8 years, and prior to that, I was a social worker in the city of Trenton, and always had that passion for people. And my site noticed that and provided me a platform to be able to go out there and engage with the community and find out what are those needs outside of the things like I brought up, such as noise and traffic complaints. What are the other things that are needed in the community, such as first responders may need PPE, or local fundraisers, or supporting local businesses. So there's not a single thing that we have turned away, and we continue to work every day to make better relationships in the community.
Fantastic. So Jennifer, you serve on the board of United Way with at the local level. United Way is also a national, or rather really international, I guess, organization with extensive reach and name recognition. How does your work on the local board help bring that national perspective down to the specific needs of your local communities?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's interesting. United Way obviously is a phenomenal network, and I think a lot of its strength is in having a formula and a lot of resources and infrastructure around, really a lot of it's around ending intergenerational poverty, and just really helping bridge the gap of inequity and make sure folks have what they need to be successful in life. And I think the thing that we've learned is it's really the challenge and change really happens at a community level. So bringing together public, private sector, individual, donors and volunteers, and the nonprofit sector together is really the best blend to make that happen. But it really has to happen within the community. So each board and area kind of engages and builds a degree of intimacy and collaboration with others at a local level. And I'm really happy to be a part of that.
Fantastic. So Gabby, you came to the university with a history of volunteerism and a commitment to giving back to the community. You're also in a unique position in that you joined Thomas Edison in the middle of the pandemic. How have you seen the impact of the pandemic and living and working virtually change the ways in which we engage with the community?
For sure. So, overall, volunteering and community work demands that you be adaptable, right? It's kind of like our responsibility to be responsive to what's happening in the world around us, so that way we can best serve the communities we live in. I was part of a larger university initiative to partner with other community organizations to bring 2 vaccine clinics to Trenton, which of course was in direct response to what our local community needed at the time. And of course, it was incredible to see people come together to provide support. But honestly, it wouldn't have happened if we didn't think outside the box, if we didn't put ourselves in those positions to create, awesome alternatives. And I think overall, TESU is invested in being a strong anchor in the city. But like you said earlier, it's my job to be the eyes and the ears in the community so that we can be as effective as possible. So I think, it's just really important to align the mission of the university with the needs of the community, so that way we can have a really meaningful impact to serve those around us.
And I think that's such a great piece. It's one of the things, nobody goes into community work if you don't last long, if you can't move, if you can't flow, if you can't go with it. So as we've been adjusting to the changes, I'm right away going to go off script from questions, because that's where the conversation leads us. But a couple of pieces have come up with this. As we look at the pieces and start with its role of business and community, I know each of you hit on it in different ways. How we respond, how do we come together? And I'm opening this for anyone who has a thought around it. But when you're out there in the field, how do you bring that home to your organization? How do you help people bring it to life as something that does become organizational pride and passion?
For one, it's just getting a list of concerns and needs out there in the community and keeping a log of those so that you can always revisit them, because what is attractive to one group or one set of leaders may not be as attractive to another set of leaders. So we have 7 affinity groups within Amazon, which all have all work to assimilate and different protective statuses in the building, and they all have immediate community needs as well. So it's coordinating with those leaders to find out what their passions are and what their immediate focuses are for the month. Once you get out into the community and get an idea of what those needs are, and when you bring them back to the site, you have to sell them on the importance of that need. So, and for Locust Hill in particular, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know about Locust Hill, it is a cemetery in Trenton that is in disrepair, that has 10 Civil War veterans, Black veterans from the Civil War era, and there's also another 190 individuals buried there, and with no grave marker, no memorial or any significance listed there for that location, as well as they're trying to open a Black History Museum at that very same location. So why not be a part of history? I went back to my leaders in the Black Employee Network and said, hey, the city doesn't truly have its own independent Black History Museum here. Why not get a part of history? And let's move forward on that, as well as let's bring some honor to those veterans, that put their lives on the line, during the Civil War era.
And I assume you've gotten takers then, right? People have said, wow, we do care about that, and we do want to right that wrong. We want there to be that legacy.
Yes, absolutely. So I worked with throughout the state. We have what's called the One New Jersey Coalition. So it's a network of Amazon locations across the Garden State, and we pull resources together and try to make, we try to target what our specific focuses are for the month. Black History Month in particular coming up, as we were looking for that sponsorship for Locust Hill, I was able to coordinate a $10,000 donation between multiple Amazon locations. And this was just through the budgeting from our Black employee networks. And it was also a partnership announcement where we were bringing volunteers there to continue to clean up. In fact, there's actually a volunteer cleanup tomorrow at 1 o'clock at that very same location. So this is a long-standing relationship. It's not just as a quick, just sending a check and then that's it and we move on about our way. But we want to really see this through to the end.
Yeah, I love what you said, DJ. I think there's a sense of appealing to folks' moral obligation and a sense of higher purpose that something like the pandemic creates so much opportunity for. And I think it's a really healthy blend of appealing to folks to leverage their individual strengths, and then to an organization that can do it at scale too. So, and for Gabriela, your ability to make it win-win in experience for students and also serving the needs of the community. I think wherever you can find that with a business or a group of individuals, to me, I found a lot of success in that.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually add to that as well. Thank you for that, Jennifer. I think that's something that I think about, kind of going off of what both DJ and Jennifer said, is that sometimes community workers have the ability to see a big picture really well. And so I think that we have to be kind of like the middleman of getting that big picture relayed to the rest of the community. Sometimes you have to help your community see that big picture. So I think that what you all said was extremely important.
For me, it's being the liaison between the volunteers and for Center for Family Services, and for the broader sense, NJ CASA, which put together the format for all of the rape crisis centers in the state of New Jersey. So I would do one-on-one conversations with the volunteers to make sure that we're getting information from them, making sure that they're okay, but also taking into consideration the things that they can provide us being in the community that could make our organization a better organization.
All of you are clearly very committed, because it's easy to say I'm going to volunteer and I'm going to feel good because I'm going to go pack food bags one day this week, or I'm going to go help serve a meal Thanksgiving and feel good. But you're all in the business where you've got to see the real work. Somebody's got to take ownership. So volunteerism to you it's a job. And how do you, Melody, I'm a CASA, And I have my times where, as a university president, I still get very, very frustrated because I can't make the system move. I can't make things as right as I want to make them. And how do you balance that that passion, that interest, and make sure that you don't get burned out? That you know, for me, I happen to work out. That's my thing, to kind of burn things off. But what do you do to say, okay, I'm mad, I'm frustrated, I'm not getting the resources I want or the responses I want. I'm not able to change things as quickly as I want, whatever the piece is. How do each of you go about your own personal side of self-regeneration?
Since the pandemic struck, I did not have a real self-care plan. I had things that I would do that I thought would make me feel better, but I realized how much I had to work on resiliency throughout all of this, being able to bounce back and to be able to reflect. And I also had to really work on an emotional self-care plan. What can I do on a day-to-day basis if nothing else is available? For me to be able to sit with myself and be able to work through this so that I don't get compassion fatigue or burnout. And what that was for me as meditation and working out, and also having coworkers that I could talk to, and supervision that I could talk to and vent without breaking confidentiality, but just someone that you can talk to and let them know how you're feeling, so I can get that off of my chest. That really worked well for me.
Yeah, I mean, I always think that it's important to take care of yourself and your mental health in general, but of course, especially when you're working with, at-risk populations. I think one thing that I realize is that sometimes it can be really difficult, and you can take some of those feelings home with you and that worry home with you, as you mentioned. I think that there's so many times that I've gone home after having conversations with community members who had really intense obstacles that they were dealing with at the time. And I felt like there has to be something else I can do. What else can I do? I need to do more, even though I know that I've exhausted all of my options or that I did everything that I could have done. And I think in general, community workers are visionaries, right? So I think it's important to really, we're able to see the big picture. We're able to know that what we want for our communities, and we have this huge vision of what we want to see for our communities. But it's important to really just take a deep breath, meditate, right? And take it one day at a time, take it one person at a time, one community at a time, and really take the time to sit back, reflect on the work that you've done so far. It is okay to give yourself a little pat on the back. I think reflecting on the work that you've done so far is really important, because sometimes all we see in front of us is how far we have to go and not how far we've come. So yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. We all know that. So that's what I have to say on that.
Just celebrating small wins, to your point, Gabriela. There's so much to do. We have very lofty goals, and it's important to keep them in focus. But if we don't take a moment to celebrate, to me, that's the thing that gets me excited. Look at what we have achieved. I agree on the self-care plan. This was an interesting thing at the beginning of the pandemic, several months in, just realizing that I needed to be more aware of how I was feeling, to the extent that finding moments that I could be intentional about when to deal with the things that maybe I wasn't feeling so great about. You have to be aware and acknowledge them. You have to hopefully choose when to deal with it in a healthy time, and then do it in a healthy way. I'm not great at consistency with working out on things, but I found a little bit of a pandemic hobby that was a good distraction. And but the one thing I think, Melody, that you said was just, being able to connect with other people. There's a level of self-accountability that when you're starting to be a little bit vulnerable with other people and tell them how you're feeling, they can keep you honest about it. And I found that to be a really, really helpful thing.
Melody is very spot on with taking care of your mind, body, and soul. At one point, I was very young and I was working at the Trenton Family Preservation House on Perry Street and dealing with quite a bit of issues from my clients, and just circumstances and life issues that they had. And I remember bringing that home, and that quickly led to my burnout. So now, fortunately, I'm part of a huge network at Amazon. So whenever I'm starting to feel like that, where I'm being overwhelmed by all of the, day-to-day asks that I'm required to complete, as well as the community needs. It's just to speak out or try to delegate. You know, if you have people in your org that are just as passionate about it, you know, just why not reach out and get them to be a part of it, and let's celebrate these wins together.
Now I'm going to go to the other side, and I'm keeping that passion fatigue, because I do think that's, you know, we all get energized by doing good work, but then there's also that side of, you know, of passion fatigue. So I'm going to steal that phrase there. So thank you. How about the other way? I know it feels like there's so many opportunities to volunteer, but it's actually a little bit, I find, of a closed environment. It's hard to break into being really a vested volunteer sometimes. What advice do you have to people who say, you know, I'm going to say professional volunteerism is new to me. Being a volunteer that an organization can count on, who's going to be the one who repeatedly is making things happen. People are trying to learn how to get into that role, to do that. Any words of advice on how you go about that, and also how you maybe date a community service or volunteer activity the same way you would date a job proposal? You know, how you look for alignment and skill match and passion match.
By using your network. Everybody that we talk to on a day-to-day basis is part of our network. So talking to someone and letting them know your interests, and maybe they may know of a good fit for you to start, and then contacting that organization. A lot of times it's available online for you to receive the information about volunteering for a particular organization, or calling and seeing what they may need. I know volunteering, like even for a large organization, it may not be you going and like filling out an application and actually being a full-time volunteer with them, but it could be maybe they need hats for children in the winter, and you're really good at knitting. So then you can just call the organization, speak to supervisor or someone that works there, and see what their needs are. And maybe you can volunteer in your way, the particular way that you want to contribute to the organization.
So much of this, aligning passion and skill is the most important starting point. I mean, you can find a way to contribute to something that aligns with almost any interest now. And I mean, whether it's knitting, you can do so much from home for those who aren't as comfortable going out in, you know, in public as much after the pandemic. But I think just asking questions, and you know, you don't have to jump right into the deep end with a board commitment. You can do an event level commitment or an ad hoc commitment just to get to know the organization, let them get to know you, make sure it's something that you're really interested in, and then, you know, find ways to contribute more meaningfully, you know, to a level that's what you're looking for.
Oh, go ahead, DJ. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I would say just start small, you know, don't overwhelm yourself seeing what other big organizations or big groups are doing. Go door to door. We have social media as well as the internet at our fingertips, so you can always get contacts. And just send out emails and see what kind of response you get. You never know. And then after time, you're going to eventually build that network up to the point where you're going to need your own team to be able to address all of these things. So while you're out in the community, even if they're not speaking up, take a look at observe the area. Maybe there's some sort of, you know, repair that's needed. Maybe there's some sort of supplies that are needed that they're not speaking to, and surprise them, you know, and a lot of times that can lead to a great reception, as well as leading to other potential opportunities in the future.
I agree, DJ. I was kind of going to say something, you know, to that. I think that, you know, you need to start in your smaller community sometimes. You know, most times you'll find that there are others in your community who may want to get involved, but don't know how either, just like you. I think sometimes when it isn't obvious, though, what you can do to get involved, you might actually be finding out that there is a need there. I think that if it's sometimes there's a need there in the community that no one has really gotten to yet, and that you can be that architect in creating something great and creating something new. I think it's always good to try and, you know, better your community. It doesn't really hurt to put yourself out there, and you actually will be surprised by the response you get. So I think whatever it is, you go for it.
And I do have to say, DJ and Melody, I'm sorry, because we've just done this in the past couple years, but one of the things we've done at Thomas Edison is we're designing a pathway for people in their capstone. They can do projects with a community organization and show how they're applying their learning to the project and leave the community organization with something completed while also completing their academic requirements and demonstrating their knowledge. So it's an exciting piece that we've started playing in a bit of the conversation that I've heard with that.
Amazing.
And speaking on that, what advice would you have for folks? You know, how do you get the most personally, not just from feeling your passion, but most personally from volunteering? Building professional networks, resume growth, other ideas on if you were to make a 30-second commercial for why volunteer?
It's doing the right thing. Many of us, if one circumstance in our life had happened, we could be very much in the same shoes as the people who are the populations that we're trying to help. So it's in the best interest of the entire country, our support systems, to make sure that everybody is as self-sufficient as possible. That way we can continue to shift resources and try to create that utopia. We're human beings, and there's always going to be that error and human element of it, but why not strive for perfection and try to create the best type of society we possibly can.
I love that, DJ. I would agree and definitely say that there's no wrong way to do something right. If your intention is to be a great person, and you go out there and you do a little bit of good every day, then someone is going to benefit from that. There's nothing that can go wrong with that. So I would definitely say get out there and try. And if that's, you find what you're doing isn't fitting for your values, go and you try something else, but it just makes the world a better place.
I think there's the altruistic getting the most out of this, where you're contributing to society and you're kind of filling your personal tank from it. I also think that there's nothing wrong with leveraging this as a way to build your professional network and use it as a catalyst for your career. I'm so grateful. My work with United Way led to an opportunity at a point that I was ready to look for something outside the organization I was with. My search ended up just being a conversation that's led to a career that in 11 years has had 7 promotions, and in a company that I absolutely love. And, I was fortunate that just sitting across the board table for, a couple years from someone was enough to create that opportunity. And I wasn't looking for it. So for anybody that's looking to build their professional network, I think there are so many things that can come from it that are unexpected while you're doing some good in the world, that, it's just one more way to create an opportunity for yourself.
Yeah, it's in regards to, building your professional networks and stuff like that. I think that, really volunteering has been really the entire scope of my network for the most part. I could probably even go as far as saying that it's kind of like the foundation of my network. I think, I've been volunteering since I was a child, and I've had the opportunity to meet so many professionals and connect with so many communities that I wouldn't have been able to connect with otherwise. And I think that it didn't only put me in a greater position to further my career, but it also gave me the chance to create beneficial relationships with organizations that I have worked for and in the roles that I have filled as well. Those connections I take everywhere with me, and I hope to use those connections to benefit, the organization that I'm working for, the place that I'm working for. So yeah, I agree.
And I have to say, you're all lifelong learners, or you wouldn't be associated with Thomas Edison. My own thought, when we all come with our lens, we all have which is built on our own life experiences. And DJ, your comment of we are all one step away from our world being very, very different. And one of the things I've found with volunteerism, and I've done it myself in different areas, as I said, I'm a CASA now. I had spent a fair amount of time with Special Olympics. but the lenses you see, the growth, the understanding of our world that you get, to me, I think adds so much to your professional value. And I say professional value just because you have a broader sense of how the world works. You have a broader sense of what people's lives are like. Certainly when the pandemic hit, and DJ, I can't tell you how much we all appreciate the fact that the Amazon trucks kept running. But everybody, because that in many ways brought life to us in a lot of different ways. I know that seems very consumerism, but it kept us in touch a bit. But we all had to think about different people's lives. We all had to think about how this impacted different perspectives. And in my own personal case, my volunteerism is something that really helped me have depth with that. To say it's not just how I've experienced life, it's how other people are engaging in this pandemic, maybe in very different ways. And as a university leader, I have to make it work for all of them. And I think that's a piece that you can read about it, you can study it, but you don't understand somebody else another path until you do it. And DJ, I'm even going to bet if you start researching some of the folks buried, some of the war heroes buried in Lodestar, you're going to find some stories that you just won't forget. You know, they're going to resonate on the path that they took. In volunteerism, how do you know when, we talked about passion fatigue some, but how do you know when it's time to change? Is it easier to figure out when to change a job than it is to figure out when to change from one area of service maybe to another?
All part of like scale, impact. Obviously, everybody needs something, you know, out in the community, and depending on what needs are more pressing, that's where you should be trying to pivot to, but also not forgetting about those organizations, the smaller ones, and their needs. That is why it's essential to keep a log of every interaction that you have out in the community. Keep a log of it so that you can go and revisit it, because people will remember if you forgot about them and you didn't return back or didn't even try to address the concerns that they have. And then delegation, as previously, like if you are focusing on something that is a major impact or is major in scale, that somebody else can really take ownership of the lower level needs that are out in the community and be able to, so that we can attack it all from, you know, all different perspectives and different individuals, so we all share in the successes and wins in the community.
I don't know that there's a right answer. I mean, I think that there's definitely a degree of, is the thing that you're volunteering for, are you able to contribute meaningfully to it and make an impact? And then, you know, how is it, you know, impacting you as a person? Is it an opportunity for you to grow, to fill your tank, to connect with other people in a way that you feel good about? If either one of those things is a no, or if they're both a no, I mean, I guess the one piece of advice I would say is don't hang on because you feel obligated to. And, you know, there are ways that you can softly exit and not feel terrible about it. You know, bring others in to be able to backfill behind you. That helps create continuity and also an opportunity for you to move on. So, you know, be thoughtful about how you disengage. Don't leave something hanging. But I think it's healthy. You know, sometimes a job change, a relationship change, you know, it kind of fulfills both of those lines in a way. You know, it can be healthy, but just done thoughtfully.
Yeah, I agree actually, both with Jennifer and DJ. I think that at the end of the day, we all have a purpose, right? And for me personally, every time that I did any sort of community work or any time that I volunteered, you know, it kind of helped me get closer to my own life's mission. You know, we all have that mission inside of us that is outside of just our jobs, outside of just our organizations. And I think that volunteering in community just helps us get closer and closer to really understanding what that is for us. So, you know, sometimes, you know, you do have to move on, but just make sure you're always you're always at least thinking of the place that you were once, or the organization you were with once. You know, it doesn't hurt if you hear about something new out in the community that may benefit the last organization that you were working for, and, you know, and then you connect them. So I hope that makes sense, but yeah, that's how I feel about that one.
I would agree as well. When you're no longer growing, that's probably when it's time to move on. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's something bad that happened with the organization. It just may mean that you've gotten what you needed out of it. And so if you're not longer growing, then you're not gonna be beneficial probably to that organization as well. So like everyone else said, just letting others know about the organization and making recommendations, and also providing feedback. Even if you're no longer volunteering, you can still, if you hear about something that could be done better with the volunteer program or the program in general, giving the supervisor a call, the volunteer coordinator a call, and letting them know so that they can make those changes so that the organization can continue to thrive even with you moving on.
I've been lucky, I've moved. That's when I've kind of changed. Okay, well, I'm moving. Let me try something new in this new area and I'll learn. I really, really like the idea of thinking beyond you, of how do you backfill? How do you bring people in so that everybody can stay alive and moving through different opportunities and different investments. And it may be an opportunity sometimes to say, I need to step back, or maybe I need to do something a little bit different for you for a while. You know, I need to kind of regenerate myself. So I need to step back, and I'll help with bookkeeping, or I'll help with, you know, writing or doing things like that you may need. So I appreciate those comments. And it is interesting because keeping a strong relationship, I think, is always a key piece. And that really helps then, I think, the organizations keep their network strong. So how have any of you, Jennifer, you gave the example of kind of using, you know, that your volunteer service played right into your kind of serendipitously into your career. But how are you aware, either with yourself or with somebody else, where volunteer service may have really played into their academic or professional trajectory?
I think if I look back to the building blocks of it, there's a degree of network. And, you know, I think something that you said a few minutes ago really matters a lot. There's just the exposure of it and the network, but I think there's a lot of learning that comes through it. Learning perspective, learning thought leadership. If you tend to be in a role that isn't dealing with folks outside your organization and is kind of insular and looking within, sometimes you lose a bit of perspective, and being able to connect with someone outside your walls who, you know, their companies operate differently. They have, you know, a different culture within, you know, it's helpful to gain that. Certainly, I mean, it can create opportunities within your business, but opportunities for yourself. And I think sometimes when we're thinking even about our own careers, we tend to be like, I mean, even for me at times, I kind of look within my business, like, okay, who can I network with? Who do I need to have a relationship with? Who do I need to learn from? And just being intentional about a level of curiosity with folks that you meet and how they're contributing in the community, and seeing, you know, how can I marry something that is helpful for me in my career and helpful for the community, so that, you know, it's win-win, really.
I believe, Gabby, you said you've been volunteering basically your whole life. How do, for those of us with kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, kind of those that are in your family or those that you've just kind of brought into your family, how do you think you introduce children to a sense of what I want to call responsible volunteerism, the commitment to it? How do you introduce children to that sense that that they can really make a difference?
Yeah, I actually really love this question. So for me, I've always had a mother who has been very open and honest with me about life in general and community. My mom is actually a community worker herself. She's a director of community programming at a nonprofit organization in North Jersey. So she has always kind of had that lens, that community lens that has always helped me in understanding the depth necessary to be a community worker and things like that. But I think it's so important, to be honest and open with your children. I think that's one of the things that I value the most about, the relationship between me and my mother is how open she was and how real she was with me about the things that were going on. And I have a mini story, actually. My mother actually grew up in extreme poverty. She lived in the housing authority. And her mother didn't, she had 10 children. My mother was the 10th of 10, and there wasn't much food to go around. There wasn't much money to go around. And it didn't matter to my grandmother. My grandmother would wake my mother up early mornings and would say, listen, we're gonna go, to the church, to the soup kitchen, and we're gonna go feed the community. We're doing this on Saturday and Sunday and different things like that. And at first my mom was kind of confused. She was like, what do you mean we're feeding the community? Like, we need to get fed too. We're hungry too. And my grandmother would always drive through, like, it's not just about us. It's not just about us. It's about the entire community. If you have enough to help someone out, you need to make sure that you're doing that. And so I just think that it's kind of, for me, it's generational. And I think that you all have the power to make that community lens generational in your own families by being open and honest. And sometimes that might even require educating yourself. Sometimes you might have to go and find out a little bit more about what other at-risk groups and people are facing on a daily basis. Your struggles may not be the same as other people's struggles. So just try and educate yourself, be as open and honest as possible with your family and your children. And hopefully that will drive through the importance of community.
Yeah, very well said, Gabriela. Same thing. My mother was a domestic violence counselor for Women's Space for many years, and at Catholic Charities as well. And so, just being a child in those circumstances and seeing the populations and the impact that she was making really inspired me as I got older. So now, I'll come across individuals within Amazon that aren't as passionate about community, and I will volunteer them to get out there and just try it out. And believe it or not, they come back and it's like, wow, that was really, really fun. That was great. I would love to do it again. So those kind of things, just getting, you got to be that spark for that interest. And it's either grooming them as they're young or just kind of grab them by their hand and let's go. Let's see what we can do.
It does definitely. We probably all came from similar backgrounds where we had influence, parental figures that really just drove that type of mentality into us. And continue to give our children, our nieces and nephews and grandchildren, that aspect of life, that the world is so much bigger than your backyard. The world is so much bigger than your neighborhood. There's so many different people in this world. Teach cultural competency so we can know how to accept different people and different struggles that different individuals may have. And also finding out what your children's interests are, because they're going to want to do things that interest them. So if they're interested in sports, maybe getting them to volunteer, and that way maybe volunteering. If you have older children, having them coach and that's something that they don't get paid for, but it's something that the community could use. Younger children they look up to older children. So just being a positive influence or maybe a mentor, but finding out what your children are actually interested in and spark that volunteering behavior with their interests.
Great examples. And I'm to the stage now where I've got grandkids coming up, but I'm going to keep it moving. And I do think, I keep going back to DJU, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but the idea we're all one change away. And many of us have been in communities where you realize, there's not a lot of change on being on one side or the other of the food pantry, that it's, it's one recession, one job change, one piece away. And and for some people it's it's more permanent way of life. And how do you move beyond that? How do you work with that? I wish I could remember who I want to attribute it to. Somebody made the comment on kind of empowering people, lifting everybody up. A comment I always say at Thomas Edison is we want everybody to be a good taxpayer. We want everybody to be to that point, to be able to live a sustainable life and a healthy life. And I think all of your great work really goes toward that in so many different ways. With that, as we kind of round the corner on the end of our time, I'd like to ask each of you to share just a couple words about your work and the impact it's had on your life.
The work has really been fulfilling for me. I remember being, a young social worker in the city and just trying to figure out ways that I'm going to make that impact. And I didn't have a lot of money back then. I wasn't fully educated and complete my degrees yet. And just to stick with it, years later, I was able to get that opportunity, finally through Locust Hill and some of the other major initiatives we've done in Burlington and Camden counties, that life has come back full circle. Even, when I was attending Thomas Edison in the beginning, I used to read the spotlights and all the cool stuff that is being done throughout the university and its alumni. And I was inspired. I was like, hope to be there one day. And just recently doing the press conference for Locust Hill and getting an email from Thomas Edison, it just really validated what it is for me as a person. And then professionally, my general manager and my site's HR manager brought me a community operations role for the greater Philadelphia area, which I just recently interviewed for a couple of days ago. So there are possibilities now opening up for me to make me do this full time instead of it just being an add-on to my regular responsibilities.
I would say that volunteering has really enriched my life. I was very much an introvert. Public speaking was not my strong suit, something I would try to run away from. And it's just crazy in the short amount of time. Started out as a volunteer and ended up being a facilitator to train the volunteers and speaking in this panel, something I would have never done. Just looking or being asked to do other things that I've a network of things that I would have never done, or people that I wouldn't have spoken to before. And that has all started with just volunteering as a sexual violence advocate. And also with Thomas Edison, it has also opened up, the two things together has opened up so many things for me personally and also professionally. And doing this type of work and working in a victim-centered services has made me do more work on myself. Things that I didn't even know, but just making sure that my mental health and emotional health is always great. It can always, everybody can always do a little bit more. And I didn't know that. Those were things that I didn't take a look at before I started doing this work. So it made me a better, more mentally sound person, emotionally sound person doing this work.
For me, I've been fortunate that volunteerism has kind of been a symbiotic relationship where giving to the community has given something back in personal fulfillment, and in, it's helped me professionally too. But I think I love the idea of it just enriching life, and for me has given a lot of purpose. There's a really great quote by Woodrow Wilson that I think for me kind of sums up: there is no higher religion than human service. To work for the common good is the greatest creed. And for me, this is, I've found a way to apply that through leadership at work and through my contributions to the community that just really gives me a deep sense of purpose in my life. So I'm grateful for what volunteerism has done for me.
Volunteerism has given a depth to my life that I honestly can't even imagine without it, to be honest with you. Just the lens that I have now, the way that I'm able to sit back and see the bigger picture and remove myself completely from the picture and see the picture still is something that I find extremely important. And, I am extremely grateful for Thomas Edison as well, because for me, the dedication and the commitment to the surrounding community, Trenton, the greater Mercer County area has been like so amazing. I've just been really moved by the work that I'm able to do here and the work that I can see myself doing here to come. So I just think that if you're questioning whether or not you want to go and volunteer, do it. And I will just leave with that.
You know, and I have to say, we are so appreciative of each of you. We did get one question in, and I know we're almost out of time, but if you've been in a spot where you manage volunteers, how do you, and sometimes it can feel good, and sometimes volunteering can be very, very taxing, and you can't tell who I'm looking at, but on my screen, I'm looking at Melody a little bit right now. You know, the other day I came home after spending the good part of a day with my casa, and there was a message from her that just said, "I appreciate you." And I tell you what, it almost made me cry. I thought that was, and the funny thing is I thought, boy, and I appreciate you, because if I'm working, she's working 20 times harder. But how do you do that if you've had to manage volunteers to help showing them the appreciation and remembering to just thank them and keep them feeling good about the work they're doing?
I would write, I know this sounds it doesn't sound the best, but it works, a system. I would make a calendar, a schedule of the volunteers that I was going to reach out to on certain days. And I would just make sure that I did it. It wasn't a certain time, but I would make sure that I reached out to certain volunteers so that I could have a close personal relationship with each volunteer that I managed. I wanted to make sure that I knew if they were getting surgery, if something great was happening in their lives, or if they were going through crisis. And we would just talk, and like I wanted to know how many pets they had. Those are things that you should know, just because you're asking a lot for someone to do, and you want to make sure that they know that they matter too. So I think it's really important to make sure that you try to find a way to engage and remember the little things, and little tokens of appreciation go a long way. So we would use, if we had extra money to buy supplies, I would get journals for them to keep, so that they can have a way to express any anxiety or just any thoughts in general to help with that. So journaling is definitely something that I would encourage if you're doing anything with crisis intervention.
I think just understanding what others are trying to get out of it. And in some cases, you know, they may be trying to grow professionally through their experience. They may have a specific goal in how they're contributing to the community. And I think a degree of vulnerability and openness about your own journey. I mean, I didn't grow up with a lot. I had a tough childhood, and, you know, helping others avoid that fate. There's a lot with United Way about the way I'm contributing there that really helps me feel like, you know, I'm having a positive impact at that. I want the folks that I'm leading through that to know and understand that, and then to understand that about them too. Because at the moments where we've really got to dig in together, you know, how can you tap into that, and how can you help them achieve the thing that they're really seeking?
Yes, I agree. Documenting is essential, getting to know your team. I run a media business outside of Amazon, so I will often bring cameras and camera crews out to some of our community activities, and I try to make a concerted effort to make sure everybody is included within that group. And then people go and see that, you know, it raises the visibility and promotion of it, as well as we utilize these activities to build on their resumes. As Jen was saying, diversity and inclusion is huge in Amazon. So there are sections of our reports for the year that ask us, like, what have we done? So I'm able to help them fill that void, as long as they're willing to come out and just put a little bit of effort in. You know, we'll get them the spotlight and recognition, as well as we have, you know, Associate of the Month ceremonies, and a lot of the community work is recognized there in those ceremonies.
Yeah, I agree. I think recognition is a huge thing. I think, of course, you know, for anybody who's working, anybody who, you know, is doing something, but especially volunteers, I think that recognition is extremely important, because it can be draining. Like we mentioned, you need to find ways to regenerate and to, give yourself, the power to push through sometimes. And I think that it's important to just build, connections with some of your volunteers, or if you are managing volunteers, or even some of your team, if you have employees that you, supervise, and just make sure that you're letting them know, hey, I see you. And you're doing a great job. And I can only hope to continue doing great things with you. So,
well, thank you, DJ, Melody, Jennifer, Gabby. Thank you so much for this. I am going to put Gabby on the spot a bit and say, if anybody watching wants to find volunteer activities, get to know the volunteer landscape, Gabby Mendoza, G Mendoza at thomasedison.edu. She is a font of knowledge and will be more than happy to help you find opportunities that fit your interests and passion. So thank you so much to our guests. Thank you for all you do. You obviously make Thomas Edison very, very proud. And we appreciate all of the differences you are making in our community. Thank you very much. And I wish everyone a great afternoon.